Hi everyone, in this lecture we are going to talk about flex shrink. So in our HTML we have a container with 3 elements within it, and that is going to be our flex container. You can see the results here. We have talked about all of these properties in depth, so I'm not going to cover them. Let's just dive into this lecture. Now, the flex shrink property is another flex item property, therefore it will be applied on any of the flex items that we want. Now, what does it do? This property actually allows flex items to shrink. If a flex item has a shrink value of greater than 1, now 1 is the default value. Like in flex grow, with flex grow, the default was 0 and it did not accept negative numbers. The same goes for flex shrink. It doesn't accept negative numbers, but the default value is going to be 1. And it will be if any flex item, I keep saying grid item. If any flex item has a shrink value of greater than 1, like let's say 2 or 3, then it will be the last item that will shrink. And by shrink, what I mean is like the item, it's the width of the item is going to get smaller and smaller. Now, all the other items will shrink to their content size. Content size is actually the minimum size required to fully show the content within that element. When all the items shrink to their content size, then the item with the greater flex shrink will shrink. So let's just go ahead and see that in action. Now what I'm going to do is first I'm going to grab the first child and I'm going to provide it with a width of 300 pixels. There we go. So this has a width of 300 pixels and I'm going to give it flex shrink. I'm going to give it a value of 2. So it has to be greater than 1 for it to work. Now we are going to navigate to the responsive tab, to the responsive menu. There we go. There it is. And now let me just go ahead and make this smaller. There we go. So if I keep decreasing the width of this window, what happens first is item number 2, the number 2 and the number 3, both of them move to the next line. Why does that happen? The reason that this happens is because the flex item 2 and flex item 3 are the first items that get shrunk. And then when there is no other, when there isn't enough width available in them to be shrunk, then we are going to move to the element that has a flex shrink of 2. Think of this like priority. So if all the elements, they have their default flex shrink value, then all of them, their priority in order to be reduced in width is going to be the same. What it means is all of them are going to have their widths reduced at the same time simultaneously. But if any of them has a greater value of flex shrink, then that item will be the last item to be shrunk. So it's like that. So first item 2 and 3, because their default value is flex shrink 1, they get shrunk. And when there is no more space to be shrunk from them, because now they are at the content size. What is content size? We talked about it. That is the size required to show the content. Keep that in mind. That always has priority over other Flexbox or in general CSS properties. Now the item number 1, it is actually shrinking. We could see that in action as well. So what I could do here is let's go to inspect again, and I'm going to grab this item number 1. So the item number 1 has a width of 300. So if we keep making it, let's go to here. Where is the width now? It is 240. So let's select item number 2 first. I'm selecting that. So because it doesn't have any specified width, the width does not appear here. We need to go to browser styles and then move down. So it's W, it's towards the bottom. So it's 71.33. So if I keep making this window smaller, you can see that it went from 71.33 to 70.9. That 0.4 was actually the amount that this item was able to reduce itself by. It cannot go smaller than that because that is the actual content size. That is the size required to show the content. And the content is item 2 and item 3. But what about the other one? So the width of this is 294. We know it could be 300 because we have specified the width is 300. It is going to be 300, but it is shrinkable, so we can shrink it. Now you can see it's 292, 243, and then we come to 159, and then how long will it shrink? How far will it shrink? Depends on the size of the content. So for this, it's going to be the same as well. It's 59.3. Now it's actually less than the others. So for this one, it is 59.3. Let's select the others. And this is 59.3. So all of them have 59.3. This is actually what Flex Shrink does. Let's grab our, okay, what am I doing? Let's go back. I'm going to say li nth child. Let's select nth child 2. I'm going to give it a width of, oops, what am I doing today? 500 pixels, and I'm going to say Flex Shrink. So let's give it a Flex Shrink value of greater than 2. Let's say, I don't know, 3 or maybe like 10. So the greater the value of Flex Shrink is, the slower it is going to shrink. Right, so let's just go ahead and make this big. Now you can see the width of this is 500 pixels. Let's go ahead and let's shrink these, and we are going to observe the behavior. So first, item 3 shrinks, and then we have item 2, and then we have item 1, and both of them actually go ahead and they shrink. So the higher the value of the Flex Shrink, actually the faster it is going to shrink. So we have 1, and then we have 2. If we put it to 100, let's put that to 100. Let's take a look at it. So you can see that even we are not even at the half of item 1, but item 2 has shrunk. And now we go to item 1. There we go. So now you know how this actually works. This is usually used for responsive purposes. Whenever you want to decrease the width of the window and you want one of your cards or one of your images to shrink to a specific size and not get smaller than that, then you could basically use this Flex Shrink. So with this, our lecture comes to an end. See you in the next one.